Here in upstate New York, life moves a little differently. Out here on our 350-acre property, every day brings a new story. My wife Dani and I, we've built a home, not just for us, but for over 300 souls who needed a second chance. This is their sanctuary. We're Mark and Dani Longo, and this isn't just a farm. It's Peanuts Freedom Farm, a place where every animal writes a new chapter. So join us as we share the laughs, the challenges, and the incredible journey of life on the farm. Welcome to Peanuts Freedom Farm. The following is part 2 of a conversation with Mark Longo regarding the events that happened on October 30th, 2024, when New York State authorities raided his home and seized his beloved animals, Peanut and Fred.
And that's kind of what kept me going here, is the amount of people that literally went out of their way to comfort me and my family, to go out and try to find the answers. The world saw that this was bad. Again, you're not going to win everybody over, but I'm going to say about 90% of people who saw this story was like, WTF. So if I'm going to take a positive out of this, it was the amount of support that we got out of this, because at the end of the day, we want this to be a movement. We want this to be, a push in the right direction for animal rights, to change animal laws, to pass bills, to change rules and procedures of how these things moving forward get, accepted or approved. Because again, we're waiting to see what the information that was provided to the judge that allowed him to feel comfortable signing a criminal search warrant on a squirrel. So those are the questions that those answers to those questions are really what will define the next portion of this case. And moving forward is what in that affidavit and that evidence show that provided you enough to sign a criminal search warrant. So much so that you came here and you did a 5-hour investigation, or 4, hell, even 3, who cares, more than needed to be. And you left here without arresting me, without confiscating any other animals here, without giving me a fine or an appear in court, and you just left. So to me, this is a kidnapping, a robbery, this is a torture, and ultimately you killed 2 happy and innocent animals. And if you want to base that on some paperwork, and you think anybody's going to support you, your sign is this alligator article right now. It is how you want to perceive something. But again, you can look at both of these cases and go, these could be the supporting factors as to why Peanut was killed. And that's what we're standing on. So I don't think we're looking at a law specifically. I think we're looking at the motives that led to a basic type of law. The thing that captures that the most for me is I have that cowboy hat right there.
Yeah, I'll make sure to get a shot of that too.
Yeah, and reason being is because those were the early stages of getting Peanut to wear hats and stuff like that. And I'll never forget, we were actually at a Mexican restaurant, and it was like Corona night or something, and the Coronas had sombreros, and they had cowboy hats and ponchos and like all of this stuff. And my mom took one and was like, this will be perfect for Peanut. I remember going home and holding him and putting it on, and it fit perfectly. It was a little bit too big, but it was like, it made it just so funny. And we snapped a bunch of photos, and then that's kind of when the character of Peanut became, more original to Peanut. Was, holy cow, he's wearing a cowboy hat. Now let's get him devil horns because, he might look like an angel, but he's a little jerk. And then my mom found an Etsy store and was like, oh, this is a carrot hat, and here's a mushroom, and, you can go down, and now he has bangs, or he has like a weave, and, he's got bunny ears, and now he got a construction hat, and I could match him with that stuff. So, that was like what kind of took Peanut to a different level of his own shtick, which is, here's this kind of plump, fluffy black squirrel. You don't really see a squirrel like him because he had so much brown and black. Like, it's usually you see a jet black squirrel, but like during the winter times, he would darken up to absorb more heat. And, you know, in the summertime, he'd be a light brown. So, you know, you would get his tummy to be brown, and his, you know, in the iconic photo, he's more brown than he is black, you know, but, that photo was one of the cutest and most you know, one of the best moments for us, because he ended up becoming getting a commercial, and they actually painted him and with the cowboy hat on. And I remember making this stupid video of Peanut being like, paint my French squirrel as the Titanic, wearing the cowboy hat again. You know, but it was like, okay, we got Cowboy Peanut, we got Construction Peanut, we got Waffle Wednesday with Peanut, and it developed this like really great sense of joy and happiness for people to go, okay, like, he's not stressed out doing this. It doesn't look like he's like in any danger or anything that he wouldn't want to do. He's not, you know, he's loving it. He's loving the camera. He's loving this. And that's, you know, where that photo and how much that kind of built Peanut as this character. You know, when you see a squirrel that's dressed up, you know, you see the really awesome squirrel that water skis, but like, in hindsight, there's only a handful of animals that you can get to do this stuff, and he was one of them. I mean, my mindset was honed in on a lot of other things. You know, where's Peanut? What's happening? You know, and then finding out that he is killed. You know, and obviously not having the time to grieve, but also understanding that the dynamics of the nonprofit has changed in ways that I never thought it would. You know, it's no more 12 o'clock live videos where we gather donations, because let's face it, the main character ain't here anymore. You know, it's, how do I now raise funding? How do I keep people engaged? Because Peanut's not here anymore. You know, do we have enough animals to keep people engaged? Probably, but, you know, you get those people that aren't here for a horse. They're not here for a pig. They're here for a squirrel. You know, and you start to lose the interest in people being part. Yeah, a lot of people will find the page because of the tragedy, but once that tragedy and that storyline is gone, people don't want to see the same memorial videos anymore. They don't want to see this, because then you get, oh, you're milking it, or why are you still posting this? Like, it's a memorial, guys. It has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that we're just symbolizing what Peanut was. But, you know, so my mindset is just, how are we going to get this place money now? How am I going to be able to afford to keep this place going? And I'm at the gym, and I'll never forget, lawyer calls, and she's like, do you know what this crypto thing is? And I was like, never even touched this stuff. She's like, well, this Peanut coin is sitting at $2.5 billion. And I'm like, is that good? She's like, Mark, people are making money off of your story, your IP, your copyright. You need to look into this. So I dove deep into this rather unruly, toxic crypto realm of people who were using my identity, using this storyline, even using the nonprofit to con people into thinking this was somehow involved with Peanut and the sanctuary, and it was helping gather funding for the organization. Because at this point, we're doing a GoFundMe, and we're doing, you know, big time fundraiser so that we do have a little bit of funding for the organization. But, you know, when we looked into it, people were making hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's not like we're talking about a few $100 here and $500 here and so on and so forth. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And in hindsight, this place doesn't need $100 million, but it does need about 5 to 10. And now you're going to tell me that somebody used your face and your story and your iconic photo of Peanut with his cowboy hat to make that kind of money, and don't call you, don't ask for permission, don't include you, don't donate to the sanctuary, don't do anything. So, you know, I got down this rabbit hole of getting really mad, you know, and it came down to the point where we're filing multiple lawsuits now, because people not only soured and, you know, ruined the taste of my name in the social media realm, but also stole a tragedy from me to make millions and millions and millions of dollars and then exclude us. And I don't sit here and say this because I want $100 million. Like, you'll see as we move forward with this YouTube channel that this is not an easy task. You know, it's not like I just get to sit in Peanut's room and ask people for donations and find sponsorships and, you know, call, you know, Elon Musk, say, hey, listen, I need $1 billion. You know, you don't have that, you know, so you have to go and work and maintain a farm, and then you got to come inside and find the money to help continue to maintain the farm, and neither one pay you, you know. But you have people who don't see that stuff and they don't care about this story at all, but they present it as if they cared. And you go to their website and it's photos of you. It's photos of Peanut. Hell, it's got your nonprofit being promoted on their website. And instead of them going, here's a percentage of it, they're going, oh, we're promoting your nonprofit. Like, no, you're not. You're scamming people. You're scamming people into thinking that this is us when it is you. And the sad reality is that these people didn't give a flying about what was actually happening in the story. They saw a dollar sign and they said, we're going to use this until we get in trouble. And when something happens, we could just fade into the glory of the sun because I hide behind a cartoon. Nobody knows my name or any of my whereabouts. Nobody has any information on me whatsoever. Once this thing kind of fades away, I'm going to take my money and just float away onto my yacht now that I could buy. You know, so that was a whole other dynamic of this story. It was like I had already gotten hit by a truck and now I'm getting kicked while I'm down, and then I get back up and you hit me across the face with a metal baseball bat and take my money. You know, so it was like, when the hell is my family going to win out of this? Because let's face it, nobody won here whatsoever. The government didn't get a W here. I didn't get a W here. And in retrospect, who else are we talking about? You know, the W's actually came from the scam artists that made millions of dollars. So at least somebody won, right? If we want to, you know, say it like that. But, you know, you look around here and you just kind of get disgusted as like, we got to come in here and live in here. I got to live in the house that got torn apart. My privacy got torn apart. There's memories here that I'll never get out of my brain now. You know, I've shown that soap stain multiple times, and I have people just going, well, you just need to cut it out. Do you have an extra $5,000 for the carpet that I have to put in there? No, because the $5,000 that I have is going to the animals outside. You know, so I have to pick and choose my battles now. Do I suck it up mentally and walk by this thing or cover it up some way? Or do I waste that money on a stain instead of helping 6 more horses outside? So you have to combat your mental aspect of it and just go, we need that 5K somewhere else. I'll just have to walk by this and suck it up. But it's not just that. Then you have to walk in here and look at this. Like, is this one of the most incredible things I've ever seen? Sure. But in hindsight, you come in here and get mad because you should be walking into a plain room who has a squirrel, who's running around happy, and we get to go and do both. But now I have to come in here and see the I love yous, the I miss yous, you know, and I show you these all the time. It's like, I could sit here and go through the letters and families and drawings and Gavin. You know, I don't think I'll ever be able to meet all of these people in my life. But, you know, you have 2 Peanuts, mom and dad, and there are thousands and thousands of these. You know, and is it the utmost honor to have that? Sure. But also in retrospect, none of this should be here. None of it should be here. And that's what you have to kind of come to terms with sometimes, is life's not fair. But hopefully using this storyline, we can expose the flaws in our government and the flaws in people who steal other people's stuff, who find their power to be apparently more important than somebody else's life. You know, at the end of the day, if you want to call me a criminal for not finishing the application in a timely manner, then call me out on it, and I have no problem, you know, paying the fine or going to prison or whatever the hell you want to do. But at the end of the day, you kill 2 happy, innocent, loving animals for what? I 100% think down the line there's going to be some changes. I think sooner rather than later, because in hindsight, this is one of the biggest 2024 stories that you have no answers to. and the public is waiting, and it's not 100 people waiting, it's a world. It's not a state, it's not the United States, it's the world. And I think just saying that is important, because it's no different than the, male or female driving a little too fast on the highway, getting yanked out of their car and body slammed and arrested for some nonsense they could have got a ticket for. It's these consistent stories that you see of unjust government overreach, whether it's authority, whether it's just random questionings, it's search and seizures, it's anything. Like I always say, you can't have a bad day in some professions. As an engineer, you can't have a B day. You're building skyscrapers. You can't wake up and go, I'm not going to really check this steel today. It looks good on paper, but, okay, I will sign this and go. And that building falls down. What are you going to say? Oh, sorry, I didn't have my cup of coffee that day. Same goes with, having that power of law. Did you wake up grumpy, and instead of just writing that guy a ticket or letting him off, you had to body slam him? So somebody has to be held accountable for this. And that is something that's going to be hard for these people to do, because nobody's just going to swallow their pride and say, this shouldn't have happened, because jobs are on the line. Lives are on the line. You're going to look out for yourself more than you're going to look out for me, regardless of the outcome of here. You might deep down understand that this was bullshit, but you understand you have to provide for your family. You have to pay your mortgage. You have to, get your kids through college. So, yeah, you might internally go, I royally messed up. But in the public view, you might just go, he didn't do this, you didn't do this was dirty, that wasn't clean, his squirrel was neglected, so we had to kill it. But again, you don't really have a leg to stand on, considering there's 400 animals outside that you didn't even look at. So, do I think in the hopefully near future we see changes? You have Georgia and New Hampshire already composing bills called Justice for Peanut and Fred. And it's basically, laws in place for animals not to just be euthanized. It also sets a precedence for governments to help save themselves in these kind of aspects, because you read some of these laws and it's now like, okay, we're going to provide more time for these animals to get a full checkup, make sure they don't have any vet care. Oh yeah, by the way, if we F up, we can only pay out $5,000. So it's doing amazing things for the animals, but it's also giving them a way out now. And it's unfortunate, but hopefully with laws in place like this, it doesn't lead to that. And that's, I kind of, don't quote me on it because I didn't really read into the bill, but I read in the bill that like the max that they could pay out is somewhere around $5,000. So now are you just putting your law enforcement and your agents in a position where they can continuously do whatever they want? And yeah, and it's $5K is, still a lot of money, but it's a payable $5K money. But how are you going to look at First, Fourth, Fifth, 11th, 14th Amendment rights violation? You have questioning of immigration status. You have killing of the animals. You have what could be listed as an unjust search and seizure. You have you took somebody's First Amendment rights to feel comfortable in their own house. The psychological damages, the physical damages, the financial damages. And that conjures up a lot more than $5,000. So, you might have this theory that this is kind of being in place for the animals, but in hindsight, it does a little bit of both, So am I proud to see that they are going down a different avenue of it? I got to take it as a positive, but it's also now kind of an insurance policy. I've only saw one of the two states mention something of a maximum payout. But yeah, don't quote me on it. We'll post the actual, and I'll probably revert back and apologize if I said it wrong. But, sure, but it's just like, yes, we're seeing movements in other states. We are seeing, hopefully, Peanuts law passed in New York State. Hopefully, we get the names of the people involved here, and there is some sort of ramification, whether or not they lose their job or not. But I can't say that I'm out here looking for vengeance in that way, but if you're going to tell me that the lead investigator won the DEC Officer of the Year in 2022 and then led the investigation that missed major critical steps in law, something's not adding up there. You can't win an award for the most outstanding agent of the year and then 2 years later do something like this, and it just leads to a question is, had this happened before? How many times has this happened? Is the most winning cases from this gentleman cases like this where Peanut had the voice that nobody else had? Maybe you killed 14 squirrels in that year in scenarios like mine, but that family didn't have the voice that Peanut had. Right. Did you falsely come into somebody's house for multiple hours? Again, you have to answer questions as to why it was so much of a threat that you had to walk 80 acres into my woods to talk to a construction company. Why you had to put a camera with a 360-degree lens above my roof when you're looking for a squirrel and a raccoon. And my thought process is you have a camera on a stick on my roof because you're looking for somebody. What are you looking for on my roof? How do you go from photos in my yard above my roof to only targeting one portion of the inside of the house? So, where in your search warrant says that you have to be specific. Where are you specifically saying you need to take photos of the exterior of the top of my roof? Yeah. Did you just pick and choose what you wanted to do that day? Right now, yeah, because we don't have the answers. We have a movement that is ready to deploy, but you have agencies taking their time. You have courts the way they are. I have this feeling that the government is trying to make this go as silent as possible, but I don't think the world's going to allow that. I don't think that they're going to allow them to die in vain. So as of right now, yes, they died in vain. There's nothing that has happened here that would put a positive spin on this. We have the support of the positivity, but in hindsight, if we don't get justice for Peanut and Fred, well, we're going to sit here and go, who won? Now we're going to say the government won because they just got into your house, they invaded your privacy, they killed your animals, and then they got away with it. So it's not here to take vengeance and, because you saw what was happening and the threats that were made, and we don't condone this type of, thought process and the violence. Like, that's not going to support or save anything here. It's understanding the fact that you did something that didn't need to be done. And there's ramifications and there's things that come from doing something like that. You can't just go, I'm sorry. It's, how come it's foreign?
We haven't even got that much.
We haven't even gotten that much, you're right. Where are the bodies? And are you going to try to tell me that I neglected my squirrel after 7.5 years of showing the world this squirrel? How come if that's the route you're going to take or whatever route you're going to take, how come you couldn't give the bodies back? How come there's no bite mark? How come there's no incident report? How come there's no medical records? How come we can't get the affidavit as to why this happened? Why is it so hard to get the FOIL report and the Freedom of Information Act information out to the public? Why is it taking 4 months this is paperwork you already have in your system. If you got to blur out some black, go for it. Why is it taking so long? You have thousands of people waiting for it. All you have to do is go through, okay, you can't say a name, let's block that out. Let's block this out. There you go, there's your information. Oh yeah, by the way, 5,000 people will all get it at the same time. In simple fact, my lawyer can't even get it. So what are we waiting for? What are we trying to come up with? What is the public going to hear from you? And that's what we're sitting on. Are you going to just try to come out swinging and make me look like the worst person on the planet? With that, in my opinion, that time is over. Because you could have made me look like public enemy number one on day one. And you could have just rolled with this paperwork thing and we had to do this. But again, you can't justify some paperwork by killing animals. You really can't. And again, if you wanted to tell me that I neglected my squirrel, how come you didn't take any of the other animals here? You know, so I don't want to say this is a slam dunk, and I'm not saying we're going to go in there and win this thing, but there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. And whether or not, you know, we come out victorious here, we still want those answers. And right now we're just sitting here waiting and going, why can't you just do it?